Hello, everyone. It is the Prophet Michael David, aka Aries, and today we are going to go over my claims as the Jewish end times prophet, aka the Mashiach ben David. Okay, format for this video. Unlike my other end times prophet videos, I'm just going to bury you in scripture on this one. Torah, the first 5 books, Moshe Rabbeinu's books, Moses' books. And I'm going to go with all of them, except for Leviticus, because Leviticus is really boring. Then I will do quick commentary on each screenshot and give you my prophetic assumption, no matter how crazy it is. And this will go towards like a TED Talk to convince you that the Mashiach has to be from the tribe of Joseph and the Mashiach has to be Hebrew and cannot be Jewish. He cannot be from the tribe of Judah. All right, here we go. Genesis 22, uh, titled Abraham is Tested. It should be titled Abraham is Tested and Fails. All right, so God tells Abraham to take his son Isaac up to the mountain and sacrifice him. And Abraham does. And once he gets Isaac bound down to the altar and everything, not at the last moment, but when he reaches out to grab the knife, the angel of the Lord tells him to do the exact opposite thing that God just told him to do. So, what should Abraham have done? Now you're going to say, so God wanted Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. No, but he wanted him to turn to the angel of the Lord and say, you know, I would do anything that you commanded me as the angel of the Lord, except if it conflicts with one other being in this universe, and that is the Lord. And then as he turned back again and grabbed the knife, and God wouldn't have let it got too far, the booming voice would have come in and said, Abraham, you know, I agree with the angel of the Lord. Do not sacrifice your son. And then Abraham would have said, why did you tell me to do one thing and then told me to do something else? How can that happen? And the Lord would have just said, because I changed my mind. And then now you're thinking that the Lord is all powerful and doesn't change her mind. But yeah, she does all the time, even in the Bible. Right after the golden calf, she wanted to destroy all the Hebrews, but Moses talked her out of it. And at the end of the passage, it said, and God relented. But all that means is God changed her mind. And then the same thing happened in Numbers 2, where God, after the rebellion, God literally told Moshe, step out of the way so I can destroy these people and be done with it. This isn't working out. And again, Moshe vouched for the Hebrews and they survived. So yes, God has changed his mind many times in the books, if you actually read them. And then failure number 2, which comes to the whole black sheep thing. And then Abraham saw a ram with his horns caught in a thicket and decided to kill the thing and burn that instead of Isaac. Did God or the angel of the Lord tell Abraham to do that? No, he just did that out of his own accordance. And it was a black ram. And you know how I know why? Because if it was a white ram, he would have just told Isaac to lead it down the hill with him, and they would have bred it with their other sheep that they had. But because it was a black ram, they're like, well, its wool is no good. God must want blood today, so what better to sacrifice than a black ram, a black sheep? So that's what happened. We've talked about this before. Tribe of Judah, blessings from Jacob, the OG Israel. My only comments were until means state of change, as I've said before, and just the symbolism of the scepter between your legs. That's the symbolism of a placeholder, not an actual ruler. Okay, tribe of Joseph, blessings from Jacob, aka the first Israel. And My commentary on that is the same as before, that right at the end, he who is a prince among his brothers is the correct translation because he was the ruler of Egypt for 70 to 80 years. He who was separated from his brothers is something that shows my arguments about the non-immutability, changeability of the Torah, because this is a translation that's been added, and it's obvious because separated does not mean anything that happened to Joseph. Separated does not mean the following. He who was betrayed by his 10 half brothers, including Judah, he who had his multicolored robe torn off of him by his 10 half brothers, including Judah, he who was beaten within an inch of his life by his 10 half brothers, including Judah, and he who was sold into slavery to Egypt, hopefully to never be seen again, by his 10 half brothers, including Judah. That does not mean separated in any context of the word. Genesis chapter 50, all the good stuff. So that subchapter is named Joseph reassures his brothers, but it should just be named Joseph Brothers Lie one more time. What happened was Joseph's 10 half brothers, again, I don't think Benani was worried about it, but they were afraid that after Jacob died, that Joseph was going to go all Cain on them. And so they basically conspired and told Joseph that Jacob told them all, but didn't tell Joseph that he wasn't supposed to hurt them. And Joseph, just says the things that he says about, I have found God, as part of God's plan, stuff like that, and that he was kind to them. But in reality, if Jacob would have said that to Joseph, he would have done it in private, and Joseph would have said, yeah, of course I'm not going to hurt them, Father. But again, they lied one more time, right to his face, and he knew they were lying, and he still didn't hurt them. Also, chapter Genesis 50, the death of Joseph. And here's my exhibit number 2 about how the Torah is not immutable. It has been changed. Things have been put in and taken away. And this is one of the things that have been taken away. But first thing from this chapter that really nobody mentions about Joseph is he is the prophet who prophesies the Exodus. The singular event that modern Judaism is built on for the most part, which isn't really part of Judaism, it's Hebrewism. But he is the prophet who prophesied it. All right, and comment number 2 about the death of Joseph, and the important one. In the preceding chapter 49, there's this big elaborate description of the funeral of Jacob, the first Israel, Joseph's father and everything. But in chapter 50, right at the end, all they say is Joseph died. He was 110, which meant he was the ruler of Egypt for 70 to 80 years, unless he retired at some point. And all it says was he was embalmed and thrown and put into a coffin. And even that doesn't make sense. They mean sarcophagus, right? If he was embalmed as a ruler of Egypt and everything, as a mummy, he was put in a sarcophagus. And then he would have had a tomb, and he would have had an elaborate funeral as well. Again, because he was one of their greatest rulers of Egypt. The pharaohs didn't really rule anything. They just sat on the throne and had sex with their sisters or whatever. But Joseph did rule Egypt, saved Egypt. So where's the description of his funeral and where he's buried? They took it out. Exhibit number 3 on things that have been taken out of the Torah, or put it, but this is the second one of taken out. This is right after the Hebrews, the Israelites, got kicked out of Egypt. And always remember, I know a lot of things say that were led out of Egypt, but no, after the 10th plague, they got kicked out of Egypt. That's why they went into the desert looking for war, because all they had was unleavened bread and a bunch of Egyptian gold sticking to it. That being said, the other part of this that has to do about Joseph is Joseph at the end of Genesis made them promise that they would take his bones up out of Egypt when the Exodus came. So Moses got his bones, but as you can see, it's just a small part in Exodus right at the beginning. Again, where is the description of Moses going to Joseph's tomb, which is probably 400 years old, I guess, because there's 430 years between them going to Egypt and the Exodus. So around 400 years. And again, of course, his remains were still there. His bones were still there because he was embalmed as an Egyptian ruler and put in a sarcophagus. You know, they last for thousands of years. So, of course, after 400 years, his embalmed carcass would still be there. And so when the Israelites, the Hebrews, left Egypt, those bones, the prophet that prophesies the Exodus itself, would have been with them. He would have been real popular at the time. Not so much right now, but at the time, they would have been one of the most sacred objects they had were his bones. All right, this next part has to do with the layout of the Hebrew army, and they laid it out in like in a cross in the cardinal directions with a tabernacle in the middle. So these next four screenshots are just how everything was laid out. Okay, the point of this argument is to notice how the tribes are arranged and how it would exactly represent the Hebrew army if it went into the battle without all the tabernacle stuff. So, in the East Camp, it was led by the tribe of Judah. In the South Camp, by the tribe of Reuben. In the West Camp, by the tribe of Ephraim. Again, as I've told you before, the city I live in, Westchester, literally means West Camp. And on the north side was the tribe of Dan. And that's how they would move out and travel, and that's how the army would maneuver as well. So let's think about where a great general or king, if they're going out for battle, would situate themselves in that scenario. The first army out was the army of Judah, and that would be the vanguard. You know, everybody knows what vanguard means, the first troops, the troops in front. And then the second army out would be the army of Reuben, and they would have been like the second line of defense, and the ones that would be most used for maneuvers and everything. This gets into a little Sun Tzu thing, like people wonder why he ever says like separate your troops, but it's not the vanguard he's talking about. He's talking about the second line, the ancillaries or whatever they want to call it, that defensively they can guard your flanks at all times, especially if they split up, they can guard your flanks. But also if you're winning, you can split them up and one can goes to flank the enemy, or both if you're really winning and if you want to get it, do like a Shaka Zulu thing. All right, and then the fourth army was Dan. That was the rear guard, and that army is exactly what it sounds. That's the army that's in the back that protects your rear from surprise attacks from the rear and everything. But what about that third army? What would you call that? You would probably call that the King's Guard, because that's the army where the king or the general would be situated. You know, they're not in the rear guard, they're not in the vanguard, and they're the ones directing the stratagems and the maneuvers. That's where the king would be, and that was the army of Ephraim. And again, the tribes Ephraim and Manasseh together are the tribe of Joseph. They just split up very early for, I don't know why. All right, Balaam's fourth message. I put this in because rabbis bring up Balaam a lot. He was charged to curse the Israelites, the Hebrews, but he ended up blessing them, and this is his most famous message. It's from Numbers. He looks down upon their camp when they're on the east side of the Jordan, and he says, I sense him, Mashiach, but not now, very far in the future. And as I've said before, what he sensed was when he looked down at the camp, they still had Joseph's bones, even after 40 years in the desert. They were probably in the ark. All right, this is at the end of Deuteronomy, the fifth book of Moses, when Moses is about to die. Moses also, like Jacob, blesses all of the tribes. And this is going to hurt tribe of Judah, but here we go. That is Moses' blessing to the tribe of Judah. Not great. It's either pretty much all about Mashiach or a cry for help, or both. And those are Moses' blessings upon the tribe of Joseph. And they're better than all the other houses combined. Best of everything, even the favor of he who was in the burning bush, that's Hashem, that's God. And then it just basically talks about how their house would be the Mashiach after that. And for the record, I am a firstborn and I'm a Taurus. So yeah, you really can't do any better blessings than that. So in conclusion, that's kind of my synopsis on my argument of how, according to the first five books, that the Mashiach can't be from the tribe of Judah, has to be from the tribe of Joseph. Um, it's alluded to they might be from the subtribe of Ephraim, and he has to be Hebrew because God has only made or affirmed deals with Hebrews, which gets me into the part which I've talked about before. So when did the Jews stop being Hebrews? And well, as I've said before, right after Solomon. Okay, I have that screenshot labeled Jewish OG sin, original sin, and everything. But I'll explain the whole thing. When you guys ceased to become Hebrews and when your personal deal with God was broken. So Solomon was the last king. There's only three of the united kingdom of Israel: Saul, David, and Solomon. After Solomon died in 930 BCE, exactly 1,000 years before the second temple was destroyed, he created a huge power vacuum, and the 12 tribes, 13, split. Uh, 10 to the north, the Levites were split because they were bound to the ark, and that was in Jerusalem. And the tribe of Benjamin did not go with the other 10 tribes to the north, which is kind of weird. But if you look into the history, they went through a civil war and they were to the south of Judah, and they were basically just absorbed by Judah, which is great with Judah because they got rid of one of Rachel's sons, his youngest, Benani, or his tribe. But their ultimate goal was to get rid of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh because those were the only ones that were going to be able to lay a claim on the throne, which they considered the throne of David even at that time. So the Assyrians came in, and the 10 tribes to the north, that were the kingdom of Israel, poorly named, and the tribe of Judah, and the absorbed tribe of Benjamin was to the south, the kingdom of Judah. The Assyrians attacked the kingdom of Israel first, and they asked for help from the kingdom of Judah, but the kingdom of Judah basically told them to fuck off and told some of them either join us and become the tribe of Judah or die or be hauled off by the Assyrians. So that's how the tribe of Levi got split up. Half of them, I guess, went north, which is kind of blasphemous because they were tied to the tabernacle and the ark. But the rest of the tribes were all against the tribe of Judah. And the Syrians attacked them and defeated them and hauled them off to Assyria. And then Assyria attacked the tribe or the kingdom of Judah, and they fought them off to a stalemate until they were basically became a vassal state of Assyria, which is conquered by Babylon. So they became a vassal state of the Babylonians. Then they rebelled against them, and then the Babylonians came south and destroyed the first temple. And this happened over just a course of a couple hundred years. And in conclusion, that is Jewish original sin. When you sold out your own brothers, echoing back to Joseph in Genesis and everything, and the 12, again, 13 tribes, if you want to consider the tribe of Joseph in two, when they got split up, that was the end of the Hebrews. There's no more Hebrews after that. So, and then your deal with God became null and void. And that's why even when the second temple was built, it didn't have the ark, and it didn't have the Shenikah. I think that's how it's pronounced, or Shenikah. And I've described at least how it's described in Wiki isn't exactly correct, but mostly correct. All right, I know this video is a bit longer than normal, and we're getting to the end, but so I just had to add this part because you're asking, like, so who are you to say that you're this special end times prophet, and how does that differentiate you from any other prophet that's ever called themselves a prophet, even if they did? And it's easily describable actually from, again, the Torah. It's in Numbers. And I'm doing a little bit prologue here instead of the post log, just so you guys can just read it. But this is the part in, again, Numbers, where Aaron and Miriam, the brother and sister of Moses, are jealous of Moses. And they're like, doesn't God talk through us as well? Aren't we prophets as well? Why does God favor Moses so highly over the rest of us? And so God gathers Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, brings them to the the tabernacle, and explains it to them. And this is what God said. So in conclusion, just from citing the Torah, the the tribe of Judah was never meant to rule. They were never meant for the throne. It was always meant for the tribe of Joseph, even as hard as you've tried to fight against that. Just at the same time, she sent you your most sacrificed animal. Reminds me of the saying, who has killed more sheep, wolves or shepherds? You know, from the very night of Passover, which sheep should we kill for the blood that we put over the door stops? Of course, the black ones. As I said before, Abraham sacrificed that black ram because it was a black one. If it was a white one, he would just let it back down the hill and bred it with his own sheep. The sheep that Moses chased to the cave where he saw the burning bush was obviously a black sheep, because they were notoriously known for running away from the herd. Your entire religion has been about black sheep, or sheep, and black sheep, and olive trees, and the moon. Yeah. All right. Well, as always, rule number 1, do not touch each other without another person's consent, aka do not hurt each other. And rule number 2, it's all about honesty. Lies are a tick down. I will talk to you all later.